feel like Kobe in the fourth quarter.
This is the Dane Moore NBA podcast, and we are brought to you by Prize Picks. Coming in Monday morning, it's December 2nd, and the plan for today's show is to sort of recap the Wolves' Thanksgiving week. Last week, 3 games at home, a loss to Houston on Tuesday, a loss to Sacramento on Wednesday, and then a win over the Clippers on Friday night. I was out of town for the holiday, so we got some catching up to do. I left town on Wednesday afternoon. I know Chris and I kind of talked about that Rockets game on Wednesday morning, but I missed completely both the Kings and the Clippers games. Naturally, it was one of those rare games where the reporters like myself and Jace are actually relevant in the locker room after the game as it goes off post game. I've got Jace, Frederick from the Pioneer Press here with me, who was in the locker room, as Anthony Edwards called the Wolves internally soft after they lost to the Kings on Wednesday. It was interesting to kind of like experience it from the outside, and I see you guys like all tweeting about it. I'm like, oh shit, it's going down. Something's happening. But I'm selfishly curious of kind of like what that environment was like, Jace, and what if just kind of how Ant presented, how it felt when Ant was sort of presenting this, trying to kind of right the ship. Can you kind of start by walking us through that?
Yeah, sure. So like obviously the first half of that game was horrific. And like defensively, they didn't defend the paint. They didn't do anything well. I think they gave up like north of 40 points in the paint in that first half in Sacramento. It was literally, it was about as close to like a layup line as you'll get for what's supposed to be a competitive team. And then after the game, like obviously they played with much better spirit in the second half, and they did fall apart, like kind of crumbled down in the last 5 minutes or so. But, up to that point, up to those last 5 minutes, it was better play. And Chris Finch was like, we had, some spirited halftime discussions or whatever. And like guys have to, at a different point, he's like, guys have to kind of just play through things. And like, we have to stick together, like through bad times, all these things, whatever. Like, it's not the exact quote, but it was clearly a thing of like, okay, like they clearly had some kind of halftime discussion. That makes sense. That was a first half that would warrant it. Got to hold the guys accountable. Okay. Got to be okay being held accountable. Okay. It's one of those things where you're going to ask about it, but like, you don't know how much you're going to get out of it from players being like, yeah, we just got to hold each other accountable, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, we said, hey, we got to do this and this better, and we talked to Julius Randle, and he was pretty short and quiet, which he just kind of is after losses, frankly. Like, He was pretty status quo. And then Anthony Edwards is like, he comes out of the shower and he can tell that everybody's kind of waiting for him, and he's kind of like laughs, and he like looks over and he's like, y'all want to talk to me, huh? Yeah, okay. And then like he's like, okay, like let's do it, like all these kinds of things. And he sits down and he goes, or as he's walking over there, he goes, y'all want to know why we trash? And then he sits down and throws his down. He's like, let's go. And it was like,
yes, we do.
Chris is like, so why are you trash? And then he just starts going on and on, like, yeah. Clearly had all these things he wanted to say, like, and to his credit, I think they were all things that he had said at halftime, or even after the game or whatever, like to his teammates, and he just wanted it out there. Like, yeah, I think maybe it's another form of like, let's put it out there in every way, shape, or form. So there's no like dancing around it or pretending it doesn't exist, because that, I think, in a lot of people's minds is like the first way, especially in pro sports, that you actually address something is by putting it out there and making it known and being like, okay, now everybody knows it. So what are we going to do about it? So that was it. Like, and then Mike Conley took the more measured, like said some of the same things, but in a more measured approach 5 minutes later. But it was like, that's who Ant is. Like, if he thinks something, he's going to say it. And he just let loose in every way. Like, he was doing like the questions might not have even been directed this way, and he's still like, and then this, he just knew what he wanted,
which
to
is
say,
not normally his style. Like,
right.
He's a generally short answer giver.
Right. And if it's talking longer, it's praising somebody, like, so that's right. I think I wrote this for Sunday's paper. Like, Ant's always been a leader in ways that people really like, but it's so often in the example of he is coachable, and the example of like he truly makes everyone feel like they matter in the locker room. Yeah. And like calls out the things they do that are good and whatnot. And like, so you just want to follow him. But this is the first time that he's really had to be a leader who is like, this is bad and we need to fix it. And I think he's kind of navigating those waters of like, how do you even do that?
Yeah. Public accountability. Like you said, it's interesting when you're saying that. I'm thinking about the Toronto game 2 weeks ago and like that disaster. There was no there was no reporters there to even publicly hold that game accountable, right? So I wonder if part of it from Ant is like, okay, well, this is kind of like the Toronto game all over again, or it's not us addressing the things that we said we were going to address after that Toronto game. That's the Gobert, Randall, whatever that was, passing it to each other, disaster. So I think it makes sense to kind of call it out and lay everything out there. These are the things we are doing. These are the things we aren't doing. And it is, I think it's hard. It's hard for us. And I think it's hard for fans too, for different reasons to kind of like name when a team is internally soft for a couple of reasons. One, because like we don't know that for sure. Like we're not there, like in the huddles, really experiencing what they're experiencing together. So you don't want to be like rude and do that, but you kind of like assume there's some of it. I think it's necessary, and now we have a better understanding of where they're at, which I think for them and for us allows us to kind of be able to put a vision of what it looks like going forward, or like what it could like going forward. All right, so we need to adjust these things. This DiVincenzo and Randall stuff, they're new, they're here. It's not working and fitting right now, and it needs to, and it needs to, and like what is going on right now. The undertone of this is like we lost the social identity of the team from a season ago. That's just like undeniable. That's changed. The vibe of how they all are together or were together last season versus how they all were together this year is different. And that doesn't mean like Dante DiVincenzo's like a bad guy or Julius Randle's a bad guy. It's just, it's different. And it feels like that when you're watching them on the floor, and it's something they need to address and figure out how they make Julius Randle socially Karl Anthony Towns fit in that way, or how DiVincenzo fits into this whole thing, as a new player. And I think even with the Clippers game, like on Friday, you kind of saw the intention, even from Julius, to kind of be a more smiley, clappy, energy sort of guy. And I think that was genuine. I think he's just understanding, or they're understanding as a group, like we need that. We need some more of this energy, because when they lose that energy, they're just such an apathetic team, or they have been such an apathetic team this season.
And that's what's hard, is that it has to be forced. It feels like it has to be intentional, and that's not sustainable, I don't think. Like you can come out of half, you can come out of a game like and be like, okay, remember, we're gonna bring the energy, and it's like, okay, yeah. But then something goes wrong, and then you just kind of drop your head again, like that. Or sustain like stretch of 3 minutes, and it's easy to drop your head again. Like a lot of times it is like, who are you and who aren't you? And it's hard to force things. So I think that's what they're going to have to figure out. Like, can they be who they want to be, or do they have to try to just fake it until they somehow make it? That's tough. I do think like just the Ant thing in general, it was kind of like when he did it, it was kind of like in my mind, finally, because of all the bad losses and bad performances, and they just brushed them all off. And it was just nice to be like,
yeah, that's true.
Finally, like all year I've been like, there has to be some urgency. Like even the games they're winning, I'm like, can you guys acknowledge that you have to be way better than this? Right. Like, and I felt kind of like a moment where it was like, this is terrible.
Well, I was going to say Portland did not have any of that urgency. Right. I was at both those games in the locker room afterwards. It was particularly the first one. They're like, all right, like we got him tomorrow. We traveled here. Let's not get too low off of a loss for a Portland team. There's a lot of, we play them again tomorrow. We're going to take care of business. Unfortunately, we're going to leave here 1-1, but like whatever. And then after that second Portland loss, I felt like that was the first time, and I think we talked to Ant and Rudy, and it was the first time this season where it didn't really feel like they had some like real answers for what it was going to be. It started, I think, in their heads being like, there might be some chemistry issues here that are going to take a little bit longer to put together. So that's, I think, where the urgency started, and then they just kept losing, right? And so it's like, yeah, it's time now. It's time now, because it is 20. I mean, after tonight, it'll be 20 games in the season. That's a quarter of the year. Like, that obviously some of this stuff takes time for sure, but if you let it take too much time, and then it slips away and it's gone.
you can't let like the things where it's taking time. You can't be developing bad habits along the way because like the chemistry's off. So now we're just pushing through things and we're winning by like when we win, it's by doing X, Y, and Z, even if X, Y, and Z aren't like championship level things, like so then it's like, wait, is this who we are? Because that's not a good team. We're just doing it right now to survive. It's a tricky process for sure. And I don't know exactly where they're at in it, frankly. Like, and what I still sit there and I'm like, what is this team when they're humming going to look like? Because we've barely seen it hum whatsoever. And that's tricky. That's challenging. Because I don't know if we ever get a straight answer anyway. It's always just like defensive team.
Right.
Like,
well,
okay.
that's what I want to talk about today. I mean, it's like. Again, it was interesting watching just like yesterday. I just watched both games yesterday on Sunday, and to just kind of do it all 2 games like in a condensed way,
right,
makes you really feel what a team is over an extended period of time. And it's like the offense is just low powered. I mean, the 2 things I sent to you, I want to talk about the offense being like just kind of low powered of late. And then they just don't defend the rim in the lane very well. That was better in the Clippers game. But it's like neither of those can be your identity and you be a good team. If you're a low powered offense, that's not gonna work. And then you can't be a team that is loose at the basket defensively. And that I think when you say like, we don't know what like the identity is, it's like this is the identity of this team right now, is what they don't do. What they consistently don't do. And they're becoming like a pretty consistently low-powered offensive team. I sent this to you, but over the last 5 games since that Phoenix win, the Wolves ranked 27th in offensive rating. They're only better than Washington, New Orleans, and Charlotte in those kind of that week and a half or so since that happened. And those are obviously Washington, New Orleans, and Charlotte are bottom offensive teams all season. And I just started like kind of being like, what are the reasons for this? Well, how can this team be so? I know it's only a few games, but how can it just shut down offensively so much? And one of the main things I came to is not a novel thought, but it's just the turnovers. I mean, I got a few things listed, but the turnover one, man, that one's a little disappointing. That 19 games in, it still looks like opening night against the Lakers, where you're like, oh, what? Are you cutting? Am I, and it's just passing it to nowhere. That's still happening at a crazy high clip.
It's one of those things where like it offensively, this team has always desperately needed floor generals, and you go like they desperately needed Mike Conley, they desperately needed Kyle Anderson, they desperately needed Jordan McLaughlin, like those types of things. And then you'd always be like, but why? Other teams don't have that. And then you just see like it's just the second nature of like, oh, I cut here, I go here, and then when this play happens, then I cut, and then the guy who has the ball knows I'm cutting, and so there's like a real synergy there. And like they never establish that because I don't think they're ever on the same wavelength, and it's because some guys just don't see the game that way. To where it is like second nature of here's what I do and when. So it's really hard to establish any connectivity. So then you need somebody being like, you do this and you have to do this and you have to do this. And now you're trying to trot out lineups where you don't have anybody on the floor who can do that when Mike's not out there. And Mike's the only guy on the team who's doing that. You're just going to have a lot of like miscommunication, bad spacing. I understand that, but
I'm just saying you're right. But there's something more than that, because
I don't disagree.
Communication between Mike and them.
Either. Right. I understand that. It's that he's not on the same wavelength as anyone else either. And like this year, like, okay, his assisted turnover this year is like 3.6 and last year was like 4.4. But it feels so much worse because it's so magnified, because there's nobody else on the court. Like if you look at like the numbers of those types of things of like the turnovers and whatnot, it's like, wow, making some terrible turnovers. It's like, no, it's like 2 of the 10. And it's just, but when everybody else is 2, it's like Mike's making turnovers. That's legitimately kind of how it is. And like, and I'm not saying Mike's played great this year. I'm definitely not saying that. But still, like net rating wise, like, yep, there he is up top. Right below Nikhil. And it's Mike, Rudy, Nikhil. It's the 3 guys who you would kind of pick to be like, who are like the consistent winning basketball players on this team. I mean, there's just not enough of them out there to all be like ever have any kind of connectivity or anything like that. So that's where I think it is really, really hard for them to like not turn the ball over to then just play sustainably smart basketball, sustainably smart offense. And like, that's where Finch said after the Sacramento game, he's like, I just got to call our stats. We're just going to call a bunch of them. Like he actually,
Good.
I think he's finally like waving the flag of like, this is our team. This is what we got. I think in the past you could get by with Kyle, J-Mac, Mike always having one or two guys like that on the court. And now you don't even have that. So like, it's even worse this year. So now it totally is like, I think it's like, we can't. We just have to call everything. And I know, like, I agree with you. That's how you maximize this team. I don't know what the maximum level is of a team that is like that.
I want to keep going on this, but it's going to take a while. So I'm going to grab the break here. Today's show is brought to you by Falling Knife Brewing Company. And as always, Falling Knife is a place to go watch all of the Wolves games. But I want to let you know that they will be open late this week as the Wolves play on the West Coast. They have a 9:30 game against the Clippers on Wednesday. Falling Knife will stay open on the TVs, on the projection screens, sound on. They're also in San Francisco against the Warriors on Friday and Sunday. So just know if you're thinking, are they going to be open that late? They will. And sounds like a fun thing to do on a Friday night. They're also releasing Double Verbal Tip this Thursday in the tap room, and it'll be in liquor stores shortly thereafter. That you've heard me mention before that Verbal Tip is my favorite Falling Knife beer. We'll have to try out this Double Verbal Tip one. It's a hazy IPA of sorts, and this version of Verbal Tip is one of their, they've won awards and all this sort of stuff for all their beers. But it's one of their best, and this one has more hops, more flavor, and is a little bit stronger. So get on over to Falling Knife this week. Pick up some new beers. Watch the game, and enjoy the Wolves. That's Falling Knife Brewing Company in Northeast Minneapolis. Today's show is also brought to you by Your Home Improvement Company. And maybe you had your family over for Thanksgiving, and just the house was falling apart a little bit, and you're like, you know what? For Christmas, we're gonna get this right. We're gonna get this window fixed. We're going to get this bathtub draining again. Go to Your Home Improvement Company if you have home improvement needs. They're longtime sponsor of this show, and honestly, a good cost-effective way to make adjustments to your home. Buy 2 windows, get 2 windows free is one of their December deals, as is a 30% off bathroom renovation. That can be a simple tub to shower conversion, or the whole shebang of a bathroom renovation. Again, I mean, you've heard me talk about Your Home Improvement Company for a long time. If you are somebody out there who is thinking about something like this, go to 866-777-YHIC, or call that number, or go to yourhomeimprovementco.com. Your Home Improvement Company, where it's your home made better. I want to stay on the turnovers thing, because it's a lot of people. And that wasn't me before saying like, this is a reason that Mike can't play or should be lower in his minutes. Mike clearly needs to play and needs to be a quarterback of this offense. I just think it's interesting that he has a high turnover rate too. Like, he is not even on the same page as everybody else. And he's typically like the most on page player there is. I just was looking up some of the stuff. Mike Conley, this season has his highest turnover rate since 2012, 2013. Nickeil Alexander-Walker has his highest turnover rate of his career, and nearly twice as high if you do like the sum of his first year and a half with the Wolves since he was acquired at the trade deadline. Dante DiVincenzo, highest turnover rate of his career. Last season was far and away the lowest of his career when he was with the Knicks. The only other year that rivals this high of a turnover rate for DiVincenzo was that year where he got traded in the middle of the year from the Bucks to the Kings, a little transition. I don't know. Mm-hmm. Julius Randle has always been a high turnover guy. So this is actually kind of like his water level, only slightly above his career average, but still a very high number. And then Gobert has his highest turnover rate since his 3rd season in the league. So that's a whole bunch of different ways that those 5 guys generate turnovers. So there's levels to this, and maybe to Finch's point, it's just play calling makes things a little bit more straightforward. So there's a little bit less room for any of them to freelance and just put the ball in situations that are more under control. But that's an absolutely has to happen thing. This season doesn't balance out if the turnovers don't go down.
I tweeted this out before, but like, here's kind of an update on it. Like, so last year, assist to turnover, like I really do think it's like the good teams usually have good ones, the bad teams have terrible ones.
Yeah, right.
And So last year, J-Max assist to turnover was 5.79, Mike 4.4, Kyle 3.64, Nikhil 2.68. Those are the top guys.
Okay.
This year, Mike leads the way at now 3.29, and nobody else is above 1.8.
Right.
Dante 1.8, Nikhil 1.78, Jaden 1.76, Julius 1.42, Ant 1.25. Like that, you're not going to win games. Not going to win games at any consistent level when that's the case. And like, Dante looks very uncomfortable, and certainly like you can see like you talked about his turnover rate, like it's when he's driving in, it's like it looks like the decision making is terrible. But we don't. One thing about that, and I haven't talked to him about this, and I don't think he would ever pin the blame on somebody else either. But it's like it's an adjustment playing with Rudy of like, okay, I can't feed this guy like I have fed other bigs in my career. Like the ways in which I can do it, the things in which he can handle is different. And like I know we're all like, we'll just do this, and it's like that is an adjustment period for players. And then you always wonder like, there are ways to relocate of like, this guy's driving in here, I'm going to take these 3 steps over, and now I'm an open target for him. And like, are the guys in the corners doing that? Are guys relocating to make themselves available options for kickouts, properly? Like, these are all things that like, I don't know if that's the answer, but like it does sometimes, I think, help explain when you're like, why did this guy forget how to play basketball? Why every time does he drive, does it look like me if I went into the paint, like, and
Yeah,
I think sometimes like it's the things around you that we can't necessarily like break down on a play-by-play basis as it's playing out live. But yeah, there's kind of, I think, blame to share on a lot of the turnovers and things that they do wrong on a play-to-play basis.
Yeah. I mean, and hopefully that's one that just comes with more time, more chemistry, more intention of just like having an urgency around like protecting the ball, kind of like in football, if you fumbled like the possession before, like the next time you go through, like you're really more intentional about wrapping it up. They need, they need more of that. They need to
that's hard too, right? Like if you're just like sitting there going, it's really hard to play basketball going, I can't turn the ball over. Like that's really hard to generate good shots at that point. If you're just going in the paint being like, guess I got to take this 10-footer, like this is not a good shot, but it's better than turning the ball over. And I understand that's true, but if that's where you're maxing out at, like that's also bad.
And that's probably, you're right. That's probably why there's like cascading offensive impact on this, because they have these extremely not extremely, but they have a lot of extended runs of flat offense, right? I when I listed these out for you, I was like, all right, what are the reasons for power outages offensively? Turnovers, poor field goal percentage, poor effective field goal percentage. They don't get out in transition at all. They're far and away last. I looked that up.
It's supposed to be an improvement this year. It was supposed to be a significant improvement this year and has not been. And part of that's that the stops aren't as consistent, but like it's not like they're never getting a stop. It's not like they're last in defensive rating, but they just not a transition team. It just
it's even slower. It's like it's slower than last season, which is crazy, but it's
that doesn't make any sense given personnel.
No, it doesn't. So the poor shooting, the transit, like those are, I don't know. The other part of this that I think is, the offense just kind of being low power was, I remember like 2 or 3 weeks, I don't remember if it was you or whatever, but like Ant was at like 48% from 3 or 46% from 3 on, shooting 12, 13 of them a game. And I was like, I don't think Ant's a bad shooter. I don't think he's gonna like fall off like in a major way. Like I think he can shoot. Yeah, right. There was like some regression that was gonna come to his offense.
Same was true with Julius, who was not gonna shoot 45%.
And they both did. And I think that's big. Like I don't know, the turnovers are big. The getting out in transition is big, but I think this team got a little bit comfortable in the first couple of weeks of like Ant and Julius lead, like doing what they do offensively or were doing then. And if you give them the space to do that, we're going to be like a top 10 offense. And that was true in those first couple of weeks when they were doing it. But you can tell like the scouts around the league have seen this team more. I mean, the ways in which the collapsing on Randall while also staying home on like the one pass away shooters, like that, Julius was doing a great job of that. It wasn't like Julius was just scoring at the beginning of the season. He was scoring and playmaking there. Then with Ant, it's the same stuff we've seen for a while. It's like it's the loading up with the gap help or putting 2 on the ball right away and just kind of not neutralizing him, but keeping him out of those waves, right? Where Ant comes at you for like 14 points in 6 minutes of the quarter. So I don't think they can, rely or anticipate Ant and Randall to do what they were doing at the beginning of the season offensively. Like we're at the point again where somebody else has to loosen something up so that Ant could get going. Like that's what it felt like in the playoffs. Remember? It's like you can't just give the ball to Ant. Like Cat's got to get a little something going in the post, draw 2, kick off of it, and then Ant can get going again. If teams are honed in on both Edwards and Randall, then somebody else has to do something to get it going. And it feels like the button they're pushing more than anyone else right now is like Rudy on the roll or on like the drop off under the basket. And that's a whole loaded thing because I get you got to do that. It just is like it's these things that are cascading. And frankly, I think Jim Pete said it on the broadcast. He's like, I'm way more concerned about the offense with this team than I am the defense. And I would really echo that. Like the defense, which we'll get to, I think there's corrections to be made there to become a top 10, top 5 defense. The offense feels further away to me. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and I think, we see so many different iterations of this team, and it's very difficult, and it sounds bad. It sounds like, oh, man. It's very difficult to not say that Ant and Rudy just are not a good offensive pairing. It's very difficult to not draw that conclusion when we've seen that, over the latter half of the 21-22 season, Ant was part of the number 1 offense in the NBA, and now no matter who you shift in and out, it does plateau offensively at a certain number, and look, that doesn't mean it was a bad team. Like last year's team was a great basketball team. But it's just offensively, I do think that there might be a little bit of a ceiling with the way that those 2 players in their offense and they're like the way they play kind of clashes. And they're big parts of the team. And like, there's not been like a consistent synergy. I think there was a ceiling to like the synergy that they can develop and maybe how they kind of, I don't know. They hurt one another a little bit on that end of the court, and they're both great players and they both can be part of a winning team. And we've seen that, but I think offensively, like I do think at this point, seeing so many different iterations, it's like, well, that's a consistency as to like why this team has never really broken through on that end of the court.
I look at the getting the ball, the Rudy side of that. I've like weirdly watched a lot of Portland this year. Yeah.
So have I. It's just, any West Coast team. It's
West Coast.
You see play the most?
A lot.
Yeah, Blazers,
Kings.
Warriors, Kings. Yeah, I don't know whoever plays at 11:30.
But I remember watching a game and watching Scoot Henderson and Donovan Clingan, and just kind of like 2-man game and finding each other or Scoot finding Clingan and in many ways, right? Like I remember thinking at the time, I'm like, well, Donovan Clingan is like discount Rudy Gobert, right? Offensively. And Scoot is discount like Ant. It's like they have the same games. They're trying to get to the same sort of like Scoot is trying to play the same way that Ant is, or like the downhill version of it. And Scoot isn't even defended like he's a shooter. Ant is. Yeah, he still finds Clingan, consistently, and he's looking for it. He wants to do it.
Right.
And maybe whatever.
In his mind, I think that's the easiest offense of the play.
He just believes it's a good, that's probably going to be good offense. I think when Ant and Julius look at Rudy, they go, I have to do this and it might work. Not like, hey, if I get this to Rudy here, this is like 90% of the time going to be a dunk. And that's the whole, it's really important how you're wired about Rudy in your own head when you're playing with Rudy. And you look at a lot of the Utah guys, Mike Conley, obviously, and what he did, and he found like the value in that. D'Angelo Russell never found or believed in the value of that with Rudy Gobert.
Donovan Mitchell did not believe in the
Donovan Mitchell didn't.
Who is very similar player to Ant. Very similar.
And I've been thinking about this a lot. It's like all these we've talked about this a lot. There's all these coaches, all these players that think Rudy Gobert is trash, externally, right? They're on the record. Chauncey Billups, a coach in the NBA, saying that. Derek Lively, a young star in the league, saying that. There's no way that all of these people out there think that Rudy Gobert is trash, and that nobody internally in the Wolves locker room over these 3 years has thought that. That just the odds don't make sense. I don't know who that is, but everybody feels like Julius Randle and Anthony Edwards do not.
A lot of guys felt that way before Mike came. Yeah. A lot of them did, because it was no like proper utilization of it. And it was just like, well, he just drops it. Blah, blah,
and
blah.
it's wrong. Mike was right. Like clearly, Rudy is helpful, but a lot of people
1,000%. And that was where, I even asked Ant after in the locker room, I was like, hey, this feels like where you guys were at the start of 22-23, Rudy's first year. And it was like, yep. I was like, how'd you get out of that? Like, how'd you guys dig yourself out of that hole? And then he basically said, like, well, we traded for Mike. And he's like, and then he just brought this positivity. And the positivity, I think so much of it was centered on, like, we have Rudy Gobert. Here's what he does. Here's how he helps us. Here's how you use him on the offensively. And here's what he's doing for you every play that you don't realize. Yeah, I do think there can be a little bit then of like a newcomer being like, I don't see it. He drops a pass when I throw it to him,
and I get some of that.
Yeah.
I get that. I mean, like,
what do you mean? Like, it wasn't just D'Lo who thought that. Like, people watching basketball thought that, because like when it's not being done properly, whatever. Like,
Rudy, I would say most people think that when watching Rudy Gobert. I would say I did think that like 4 years ago before he was here.
Yep.
And then you watch it over and over again, and in the aggregate, you go, "Oh yeah, this is a positive." Not that those things aren't still problematic, but
frustrating in the moment for sure. It's like, wait, I have a turnover because that happened. Now that's my turnover. I had 3 turnovers here. And 2 of them were trying to throw in the ball, and I think it wasn't that bad of a pass. I understand why that's frustrating. But that has to be the whole, like, in the team aggregate, this is a big positive, but it's hard to shift your mindset that way.
Mm-hmm. And it just compounds, man. Yeah, that lack of trust,
and that's why maybe it does take it. That's why it took time the first time they reshuffled when they brought Rudy in. That's why maybe that's part of the whole process of this is like shifting people's viewpoints too, and like getting used to playing with them and whatnot. Like, I think even though it was bringing in Julius and Dante, and I think Julius is a player that people have to adjust to as well. Them adjusting to playing with Rudy probably matters too. That's because he's not like so many of the players that you just like play with all the time in the summer or on your previous teams, all of that.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting. And I hope this happens. It'll be really interesting to see if there's, maybe, so this is the first quarter of the season. If it's like the third quarter of the season, if Julius really gets finds a great chemistry with Rudy from even just to score for him. Like Rudy sets me these great screens. I didn't realize that if we play this action all the time, he's going to create advantages for me. And then, you get it, you just lower the turnovers progressively, go down. You figure out how to hit him with the higher bounce pass or to throw the ball higher. Right. He learns that stuff, because at the end of the day, this team cannot win a championship if there are legitimate questions between how Anthony Edwards and Julius Randle play with Rudy Gobert.
Right.
Those are the 3 best players on the team. And there are serious, real questions about how those things play off of each other. Obviously, Ant is having a great offensive season individually overall. Randle, the offense has been better with him on the floor, but it's largely, in those minutes when Rudy isn't on the floor. Like, there's stuff there, but can it cohesively come together through? Yeah, I think the 3 of them at the head of the snake. Let's do defense. So I know we got to keep moving here. Also watching these 2 games, and this is going to go back to Rudy and Randle too. It's just they are not defending the rim and the lane like they did a season ago. And what kind of got me on this was, you go these last 3 games, Jace, where they played Şengün, Sabonis, and Zubats, and Rudy can't hold those. He can't hold those guys in single coverage. I mean, how many times do we see Şengün solo post up on Rudy and put him in the basket? How many times have we seen Sabonis do that? Zubats, that first play of the game, they run a post up to Zubats, which I think they do often, but they went to that often. Like, teams see that one-on-one Rudy post up matchup to be an advantage. And that to me is a huge is a huge red flag. It's not that Rudy isn't overall still elite coverage center, all that stuff, but they don't have that gear anymore where they can put Cat onto Alperen Şengün and have Rudy lurk.
Yep.
So they have to just take that. They
Yep.
have to take, like tonight, they probably just got to take Rudy guarding Anthony Davis. We'll see how that goes one-on-one. They don't have these other.
Assuming AD plays. I think
yes, yeah. Well, he played last night. I mean,
that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Like the whole back-to-back heavy minutes travel. Like who knows? LeBron, AD, we'll see. Yeah.
Right. And so I just think like that's on like Rudy. Rudy can't do that.
Right.
At a high level, never has been able to.
Mm-hmm. We saw that this just defensively, like the gear that they switched. Like this was back in the 22-23 season as well. Like they used to have to always hide D'Angelo Russell. And so that was who had to go. That was who had to lurk, which just wasn't like, everybody like, so Rudy had to take on a true defensive assignment. And then like, because D'Lo had to lurk because you couldn't really have him guard anybody. And then when they made that trade, now they had 4 defenders around Rudy. So Rudy could lurk and their defense went to a different level in a lot of matchups, and now it's kind of in the same boat of like, they don't have the personnel where he can lurk. And I agree with you. Like him lurking is the best version of him.
Especially against that type of center.
But I think in general, but 1000% in that matchup for sure. Like, and that was the one where you knew they would do it on a night-to-night basis. I agree. It's just not. It's not going to be the same caliber when you can't go to your most effective option.
Yeah. So I think there's that element of it. Don't have that gear anymore. Okay, that lowers what the defense was going to be. It's going to lower how well they protect the paint, and then there's been massive pick and roll coverage issues all year with Julius Randle as the low man, which I will say, but just in general, not even just Randle, but as a team, that might have been their best pick and roll coverage game of the season against the Clippers. Like they were actually, you could tell they like hammered that home, like Julius get all the way over.
Yeah.
And he did, and he was active. Rudy seemed to trust it when it was the other guys, like one game, but that
like
was better.
The Clippers without Norm Powell might be one of the worst offenses in the NBA.
Yeah,
I mean, like they're already not good offensively, and then Norman Powell, like that might be one of the worst ones. But I agree that coverage wise, it looked intentional. At least everybody was where they're supposed to be.
And it hasn't looked that way over the course of the season. Rudy hasn't been able to guard in isolation at a high, like it post up isolation at a high level. So you just have this feeling of the rim and the lane not being as protected as it used to be. And I looked up those numbers. And if you go last season, the Wolves were second in the NBA in field goal percentage at the rim against them.
Yeah.
62.7%. This season, they're 14th in that, 66.7%. Last season, they were 4th in field goal percentage against from that floater range, 41.4%. This season, they're 21st in defending that floater range. So, I mean, I've been saying this since the beginning of the season of like, particularly when Rudy is off the floor, like the paint feels loose. The paint has been loose. That's just like a fact. We're 20 games in the season now, and teams can score on the interior of this team in ways that they just weren't last season. And it is this is concerning to me to some degree. While I said I believe in the defense a little bit more than I believe in the offense, some of this is just personnel and the coverages that they can run. I think, you get this better low man coverage concept, defending in coverage better, like they can bump back up. But I wonder if they can be, like, even in the rosiest of outcomes, if they can be a great defensive team again. Like if they have that gear, do you need to have that cat look with the Rudy roaming look for them to become great? Because last year they did. They needed that element to be great. And if that team needed it, this one probably does too. And so that's, again, watching those two games, that was a real reason for concern of like wondering what the ceiling even could be of this.
Yeah, it was like tenacious, obviously, but like part of the biggest challenge of beating that Wolves team was the length, and like Cat's length absolutely contributed to that. Kyle Anderson's length, it's a long dude too. Like there's just arms everywhere, and you feel like there's no passing lanes, and like it just feels like nothing. There's no space, and like now there is. Like it all feels significantly more beatable. And like you talk about that percentage wise, what they're giving up, they allowed the third fewest shots per game inside of 5 feet last year.
Yeah.
So like, it's not even just like the percentage is higher. Teams are getting there more and making more.
Yep.
So like that is.
I wrote that down somewhere. Not in my notes on my computer. Yes, it was. Yeah, pretty big jump. Not from and now it's 15th.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a big drop.
But it was just like the length of what they did made everything feel daunting, I think, for opponents, and now it just doesn't feel like that. Yeah, I mean, like that's just a reality. So I agree with you. And like, look, I don't think we thought that this could be a number one defense anymore. I didn't, but I thought it could be more like a fifth. And now I'm not sure if fifth is possible.
Yeah, I mean,
Rudy's career says it is.
That's what my thing is. It's like,
right.
and I'm really caught in these last 3 games of like, these guys are like licking their chops at solo post-up opportunities against Rudy, because that often like just, I don't know, wouldn't happen. And back in Utah, Rudy struggled with this too. Like, go look game 3 of in the bubble against the Nuggets. Jokic scores 22 points on Rudy in the post in the first quarter of that game. This is not what Rudy is elite at defensively. And that's why it was so important and valuable to have a cat there who could help mitigate the thing that Rudy was worst at. Rudy has always been the worst at guarding Domantas Sabonis, Nikola Jokic, Şengün, Zubats types, the guys who will throw their body into you and score through you. So I think teams are going to continue to go to that. When, again, a season ago, you could, all right, put Cat on Şengün. Now Rudy's on Tari Eason, not guarding him. Amen Thompson, not guarding him. Sacramento played that Isaac Jones dude. Okay, now Rudy guards this guy.
Yeah.
Like there are, maybe not in every starting lineup is there an Aaron Gordon situation like they could against Denver, but there would be, in the regular season, Rudy could play almost half of his minutes against those type of options. The guys that you're gonna leave open in the corner like Terrence Mann. It's funny, like that's the whole Terrence Mann thing. We're like from years ago that he got roasted for this was the strategy. Like,
right,
Rudy, you leave that non-shooter in the corner. Again, one of the just biggest like fallacies of all the Rudy thing is that, because we're both like, that's the best defense possible that you can run with Rudy, and everyone's like, that was his worst game of all time.
Yeah.
It's a funny thing, and maybe some of these new guys are still acclimating to this too. But yeah, I do wonder what the ceiling is for that.
Yeah, and it's like, and sometimes you'll be like, I've tweeted this before, like, I've been like, Anthony Davis kind of has Rudy's number, and people are like, what are you talking about? Like, Anthony Davis, all his production is coming against everybody else, and that's not even wrong. Like, clearly in these games, like, Anthony Davis is really going to cook when Rudy's out the court, because they don't have any other option. So like, he is going to murder Knox. He's going to murder Julius Randle. And so like, at least Rudy, it's like some resistance, but it's like, that's why they have no option. They have no option to do anything else, because Rudy covering somebody at a C plus B minus level is significantly better than the D and F they're getting from the guys who just physically, it's just like, can't do it. Can't do it. Doesn't work.
Yeah. Which is, again, one of the biggest surprises of Randle is that's a can't even try it.
No,
or they haven't even tried it.
Looks more like a small forward defensively than a center, like, and I know we knew he wasn't a center, but like, he's leaned too much one way versus the other. It looks more like a 3-4 than a 4-5.
Absolutely.
That's been a huge issue.
Couple things. I know we're running short on time,
but
good. to get a positive out of this, I mean, Nickeil Alexander-Walker is like not only just a bright spot in this. What I put down was he is becoming more than an offensive role player. And then it was interesting that you wrote for today's paper about how he should be playing, 30 plus minutes. So I think we're kind of on this same idea with Nickeil of, this is just like one of the best players on this team right now. Having just, I've done probably 10 different segments on Nickeil being awesome this year, but we're 20 games into the year, and it's not just him hitting corner threes, and it's not just him doing the defense that he did before. If we could delete the possessions he's played point guard this season, which he never should have in the first place, right? I'm loving his self-creation, his playmaking, for others. Like when he's asked to be a secondary creator for this team on top of making a lot of threes at volume and playing defense the way he does. It's like, I don't know, man. That's what I know. That's what we used to call a role player. But when you're doing it at this degree, that is just a force for good. And if you want that, playing 30 minutes a game, and I'm noticing when I'm tracking the rotations, like Finch is turning that dial.
It's
he's trying to get it there.
It's eking that way.
It's not there yet. Yeah, you're right.
Right.
Go ahead.
It's he honestly has been everything that you would have hoped Dante DiVincenzo would be this season.
I know, crazy. Yeah.
It's like he is that player. I mean, legitimately that player for them. And I still think Dante can get there, but like he's not close to it right now. So Nickeil has been incredibly.
How sick would it be to have 2 Nickeils?
Yeah, oh my god, it'd be unbelievable. Like I don't think Dante can get there defensively. Like that's not who he's ever going to be like as a defender. But like, man, if you could have just an adequate defender and then just like a Nickeil level offensive player alongside Nickeil, like wow, that would be incredible.
Even more volume threes, maybe. But
whatever. But I mean, and you see it, and it's one of those things where the eye test matches the numbers. Like, and I know we've seen these numbers all year, but it was just like looking at them again yesterday. It was like this dude's net rating is 8. That is for a sub 500 team. His net rating is 8, and like that was what Rudy led the team at 8 last year for a 56 win team. So Nickeil, they are beating opponents as badly on a possession by possession basis with Nickeil as they did with Rudy last year on a 56 win team. Like they're great when he's on the court. And so it's like, that seems like a pretty simple solution. Like I know everybody wants Rob Dillingham to play more, and I still understand that because, like we've said, like Nickeil playing point guard is greatly hampering Nickeil. Like you're not getting even close to the best version of him when he's on the court. But like this is a guy whose minutes if you just bumped him up like 7-8 more minutes a game, if the production stayed the same, that might be a very big sell because like his net rating with Julius is very good. His net rating with Nas in a 2-man pairing is very good. His net rating with Rudy is 12.8. It's the best. Like it's that those two guys together are incredible defensively. Like it's just like he fits with everybody. So I think you have to find more ways to play him. He leads your team in effective field goal percentage. He's still 96th percentile in defensive estimated plus minus. Like everything he does is like, wow, this is actually like an elite basketball player. We've made the comp of like poor man's Derek White in the past. And now it's like not that poor man, you know, like it's, and I don't think Boston would be like 27 for Derek White. No, he's like sometimes like almost leading the team in minutes because they know his value. And you can say like, can he be a full-time 3? Is that the problem? It's like Jaden's covering the point guard half the time anyway. Mike's guarding the small forward. What difference does that make? I don't understand that argument. The only reason like they have the whole point guard thing and not having one, and that does kind of hurt them. But like that's not a reason for Nickeil to not play. Like that has nothing to do with it.
It'd be sweet if Nickeil could play point guard.
Yeah,
and that's why he's not Derek White.
Right.
And the other
he's not play point guard for Boston. That's what I would say he could play point guard for Boston.
You think Nickeil could?
For Boston? Yes. Yeah. They literally have 5 point guards on the court half the time.
Right. I guess
Jason Tatum is the point guard for Boston when Derek White's
Okay, I get it. I just meant like not being the main handler or the highest volume handler.
I don't think Derek White would look very good as point guard on the Timberwolves.
Yeah. Whatever. I'm not. I wasn't going to the negative.
I hear you.
Where I was going to go with it was like Alex Caruso is a comp. And again, these are high end comps we've made for Nickeil over the years, but we've been blown away by I don't know. He's probably been on the Wolves for like 130 games. I've loved every minute of it.
Last year, he was second on the team in net rating, just behind Rudy.
Yes. And he's been one of those guys. He's been a Derek White. And the reason I bring up Caruso is like with Caruso, there's kind of been like a minutes cap for him.
Yeah.
Because he's just insane and like plays so hard. Like he doesn't go that far. But doesn't it feels, would you have that hesitation, I guess, with Nickeil? Like if you turn Nickeil up to like 35, do you think he's just like dead out of gas?
That would be the only argument I could ever think of.
And to be clear, I wouldn't make that argument. I think Nickeil could go. I really do. I don't think.
Don't you want to? And especially when your team is not good right now, don't you want to find out? You know, like, don't you want to see? Like, be proven wrong first. Like, don't think of the reasons why you can't do something. Like, try it and just get the evidence. When your team is bad, like right now, it looks like a bad basketball team. Like, just see. You know, like I think at some point you have to reward the players who are playing the best on your team. You have to at least try it. And if it crashes and burns out, you can always go back. I don't see why you couldn't.
So this ties into the last thing, which is the the Conley comes back and Dillingham's minutes disappear, right? And there's just this like fundamental issue with where they would want to let go of minutes and like give to guys like Nickeil Alexander-Walker or even Rob Dillingham are in these starting groups.
Yeah.
You know? And I think the perfect example of this is, so Dillingham doesn't play, right?
Yeah.
And the reason for that was that he would normally come in at like the beginning of the second quarter, right? Or the fourth quarter, that late first, late third spills over into the fourth quarter minutes. Like that's where the ninth guy in the rotation goes. But what the Wolves want to do at the start of second quarters and at the start of fourth quarters is go with the Conley and Gobert plus the 3 bench guys group.
Right.
Which that's actually defendable. That's the best 5-man pairing they have on the season. That they have a 28.8 net rating with Gobert at the 5, Naz at the 4, Nickeil at the 3, Dante at the 2.
Yeah, it's the lineup for basketball lovers. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, we've been on this for a long time. So I say that to mean like, wait, okay, well, I get why you're not playing. You want to get to that and play that over Rob Dillingham. But I also want to play Rob Dillingham more than 5 minutes, and it would need to come from this top part. And, I want to play Nickeil Alexander-Walker more, and it would need to come for this top part. And I know everybody always rolls their eyes at us when they do that, and they go, here you go, Dane. I wrote it out. Here's the 240 minutes. It's 2020. Yeah. And I get it, and they could be better about this. I think Finch and Norrie could do a better job. But I think that specifically is the Rob Dillingham block that they're running into, is wanting to really empower that second unit with the Mike and Rudy and the bench 3 to go. And it's just a little bit harder to go grab minutes from the top. And then I know a lot of people are like, well, then just take Julius out of there and put Naz in there. And yes, that is the argument. That is the argument to do that. But let's not pretend that wouldn't be very,
big
disruptive.
Yeah.
But if you did that, you could get to more Nickeil minutes, and you could get to more Rob Dillingham minutes. Clearly, Finch hasn't determined that to be the juice in that to be worth the squeeze. But those are the things I'm seeing them running into right there.
Yeah, I don't like that. Feels like a button that, like you said, it's a major disruptor. And I think that they want to exhaust all options before they would ever do something like that. There are like personalities at play. There are things at play. Like you can be like, well, it's just because blank is making more money. Yeah, dude, that's true. That's the way things work across the NBA, and like you can draw the minutes thing and be like, well, you can keep this starting 5, but just this guy gets this many minutes, this guy gets this many minutes. But like you said, the actual rotation piece of the equation matters, because you can't just be pulling a guy, be like, okay, he plays 3 minutes here and then he sits, so you could still get to this, and then he can come back in after that. It's like you can't do 4 minutes, 4 minutes, 4 minutes, like, which
is what they were trying to do with Mike at the beginning of the season. Right. And both Finch and Mike said that's what messed me up.
Yeah, and it's true. Like, I don't think any player really thrives in that, and that's why, like, I'm never ever gonna judge Rob for how he plays in a 4-minute span and then is out. Like, I would never judge a player on that. Sure. Like, it's an amazing skill if you can come in and always be impactful and always play well without any rhythm. But I don't think anybody should be judged on that.
Shout out Nickeil Alexander-Walker.
Yeah, right.
He can do that. Yeah,
right. But that's, that's rotations are tricky in that way. And like, I know that seems like the easiest solution's there, but like, I do think it's something where like they did close with Nickeil over Jaden at the end of that game. Yep. And I think that needs to be something they consider more, because it's always been pulling Mike out. And I'm not saying you can't pull Mike out, especially if he's had a rough game or whatever. But like, I do think they have to have a little bit more license in their head of right now, Jaden is shooting so poorly offensively that it really bogs down in offense when he and Rudy are out there. So if you need buckets late, you have zero spacing, and Nickeil's playing better anyway. Like, and that's going to get Nickeil at least up to 28 to trying to close out these games when they're closing tight games every single night. I mean, because that's what this team plays now. Like, give yourself the best chance to do it. Give it to the guy who's earned it. That's kind of my main argument for getting Nickeil up in minutes right now.
The at least not going offense defense with Jaden and Nickeil also feels political.
Yeah.
And I know you want to believe in Jaden as an offensive player. I get it. And you need to aim high, and you need to have that hope for him. He's not that, at least not right now, when his shot has been off. And yeah, it's frankly, it's crazy. It's exactly what I would do if I was guarding the Wolves late in games. Be like, all right, so-and-so on Jaden, you're off, heavy gap right there.
And sometimes you're
probably
just
get it to
chasing
you.
it. Yeah, sometimes you're just chasing it. Like
and then just go run him off. Just sprint at him.
That was what Boston did at the last play of the game, and it ended up with the Wolves. Not only Nasri missing, but they didn't even get a shot off in time because Drew just said, "Nope, I'm going over to Ant," and they just left him open, and then they just rotated, and Jaden didn't even at that point want to take that three, and it was one more kick, which normally in a right play is the right time. But they didn't have time for it to make that kick. You know, it's a lot easier to defend, and then Rudy's out there too usually, and it's like, well, now it's very easy for teams to take away all spacing.
Yeah, and especially if Julius is out there, you know, that's like,
Randall. Not worried about him pulling a three. You know,
it's a lacking. That is too much non-shooting out there.
Yeah.
at the end of games, and
they're like starting games with that too, and you wonder why they start rough. You know, like
there's and man, we've learned this. Like there is such like an energy suck to this team, and specifically Finch style basketball. When you have lineups out there with 3 non-shooters or 3 non-shooting threats. I mean, it's the same thing. Like, I know we're all praising Kyle Anderson this season. Like, oh, get him back. How do we trade for him? But Kyle Anderson was a disaster when he was out there with
Kyle and J-Mac. When J-Mac wasn't knocking up shots. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm getting to. It's like there is just like a firm wall that every single team hits when they got, like, if you have 3 non-shooters out there, and teams are guarding it accordingly, which they're always going to. Basically at the beginning of the game when they're like, oh, this is our game plan. Yeah, let's start doing it. And then at the end of the game when they lock in on like how they're trying to be able to do that. Like, I don't know. It'll be really interesting if these next 19 games are like the first 19 games, or just kind of copy and paste it. Does Finch continue to? How long is the leash on this whole focusing on the 8-guy operation, which is really our answer to the question of like what happened to the Dillingham minutes? Is Finch is choosing to try to find a rhythm with this top 8, and he's going to do that by hell or high water is what it seems like. I think Rob pushed it to a level there, and Finch still opted to stick with the 8. So I think that's where we're at right now.
I would say this, like, to anybody when we talk about the shooting options, it sure does seem like it would be easier to avoid those lineups where you have multiple non-shooters if you did make a change in the starting lineup. Like, correct or not correct? Would you? And I think that they're not going to do it right now, and I still understand why, but like I do think a breaking point probably has to be soon. Because it's just like when you look at it, it's like it doesn't make sense. This is not going to be this maximum version of this team. So I think that at some point, if they want to actually reach the best version of themselves, they are probably going to have to pull the trigger on one of those 2.
And again, and then some ripple effects of that are, all right, less of a commitment to Julius Randle in Anthony Edwards minutes. That's a win. Okay, maybe you can get more Nikhil minutes in there. I think actually if you break that starting, like you switch the starting lineup and get to, start Nas there, and I think you can actually more easily get to Rob Dillingham minutes, and you could probably break the rotation out to be 9 guys. And more Rob Dillingham probably means fewer minutes with 3 non-shooters out there, because I mean, I'm not like super sure what level of shooter Rob Dillingham is. I don't know. I don't know what level of shooter is going to be like in his career, but like, give me a Rob Dillingham open 3 over Jaden McDaniels right now. And probably even Julius, I think. I think I like
catch and shoot. Yeah, I think so.
A catch and shoot. Yeah, that's that's what I'm saying. Like, I think, I don't know, maybe I was gonna say this month, but at some point a change has to happen, and it will be frustrating if they wait, they make the change, and then it works, and it's like, okay, maybe we could have had this a month ago. But where they're at right now, and this could also, like, we've been wrong a million different times of what we're thinking, and like it might pay off that they dedicated everything they could to finding a rhythm for this top 8, because they know that's going to be their top 8, and in the playoffs. I'm not even like you make the lineup switch for Rob. I don't like that's not like too high on the list of priorities for me there. Like, I think you're maximizing everybody else. I think like Jaden probably plays a little better if he's not playing as many minutes with Rudy, and that type of thing right now, because the Rudy Jaden thing isn't great right now. So like, and a big part of it is because of the offense and defensively, like it's just clear that Nikhil and Rudy is the best pairing. So like, why aren't you maximizing those 2 playing minutes together? Which I know they're getting with that
start of second quarter lineup, but like start the game with it. Like there's a lot.
Let's briefly talk about the Wolves Lakers game by doing prize picks here quickly. I don't know if you did Wolves ones or
No,
I bet you did. I bet you did. You did football, but I'll just
partly because I don't know who's going to play for the Lakers, so it's really hard to
yeah.
pick prize picks when I don't know who's going to play for the Lakers.
That's fair. My sort of thinking was just going off of kind of like that first game, and I think the way that that the Lakers can match up with Julius Randle has me taking, I'm going to say, less than 31.5 points plus rebounds plus assists from Randle. I don't think, he's struggling a little bit right now. He played better the last game, but I think that Rui Hachimura and Anthony Davis guarding him is a non-ideal matchup situation there. And then I'm just going to go, if I'm riding the cold hand with Randle there, I'm going to go the hot hand with Nickeil Alexander-Walker. His total for points is still just at 8.5. I don't know if I want to do that or if I want to get an all-encompassing one, whatever. We'll take, we'll take more than 14 points plus rebounds plus assists from Nickeil Alexander-Walker. So that would be my two from Wolves Lakers. Jace, what do you got from Monday Night Football?
Javonte Williams under rushing 35.5 is what's up there right now.
Oh,
there's just
right.
Yeah, there's just a lot of ways to get. Oh, it just went down. There's just a lot of ways to get there between like who gets the carries. They have been passing the ball more and more. Like there's a lot of paths there. Like he could certainly go over, but I think it. And then receiving, I'd go with David Njoku over 46.5 receiving yards. I don't think that Cedric Tillman's playing in this game.
It's good player.
Judy then probably gets Surtain. Like I like Njoku to have a good game.
Yeah. So like if you just want to pick like two, like I wouldn't have been able to do my lineup with just Randle and Nickeil Alexander-Walker because they're both the same team, same game. So you could mix in a Lakers player. But what I think is fun is like you could just do this as a $5 lineup, and you got Monday Night Football on the other TV, and you're watching the Wolves game too. You track all this again, just like a $5 lineup right here. If all four legs of this hit, you turn your $5 into 50. And then you got 10 more lineups you can create from there. That's prizepicks.com, the Prize Picks app. If you haven't tried it before, use promo code Dane when you sign up. You'll be credited with $50 when you make your first $5 lineup. All right, Jace. It'll be interesting to see. I feel like I say this at the end of every time when we talk. It's like be interesting to see where they are in a week when we get back here,
because it's in the same spot, right? And that's why,
it's my way of trying to be positive. Maybe it'll be better.
I think they'll win tonight.
Yeah,
I'll be positive there.
Yes, yeah. But Lakers are coming off of a back-to-back there.
I haven't seen it. Guess the spread, and I'll look it up.
The spread of the Wolves Lakers, I would say it'll be Wolves by 6.5.
8.
Well, yeah,
which definitely tells you probably an availability thing.
Oh yeah, so I should say this. Like I watched that game last night. Their game against the Jazz, and they were super shorthanded last night. D'Lo and Cam Reddish were sick. Austin Reeves missed the game because he fell on his tailbone sort of thing in the game against the Thunder. Actually, that was part of my reason for wanting to take Nickeil. I was like, they really don't have. They really are short on bench bodies, and it's a back-to-back. So it is very much an opportunity for the Wolves to get right. Jace and I will be there at that game, and then tomorrow I will be back with Britt Robson to talk about it. He's writing in the morning, so we won't have that episode out until we're recording at 1, so it probably won't be out until 3 or 4 p.m. So if you're looking for that episode with Britt, just know on Tuesday afternoon it's coming just a little bit later in the day. Jace, I appreciate you, and I'll see you at shoot around here in about a half hour.
Can't wait.
Follow Jace on Twitter at Jace Frederick. I can't wait. I'm Dane at DaneMooreNBA. Until Tuesday afternoon with Britt, he's Jace. I'm Dane.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Green and hot so you can find me in the crowd, yeah. Don't let standards ever bring you down, yeah.